Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spoilerin Time, which we call It's Spoilerin Time because it's Spoilerin Time. Now, if you're looking for Cordkillers, that's the show where we talk about how to watch, what you want, when you want, where you want, on whatever device you want. This is the companion show. So, like, if you read James Joyce and then you have a companion volume to explain James Joyce to you, that's what this show. No, wait. This is the fun show. The Cordkillers is the explainer.
Stop talking,
anyway,
Tom. This is like the victory party. You've made it. You've watched what you want, when you want.
So this is Finnegan's Wake.
Yes, sure. It's Finnegan's Wake. That's a great... Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Brushwood, and we're joined by Hack 5's own Shannon Morse. How are you, Shannon?
I'm great. How is everybody out there?
Tell you what, we're fired up to know how we're doing in the winter movie draft.
Well, it's all over, Brian. Christy Cates has run away with it. $39 million on Jack Reacher, Never Reach Back. Inferno by Justin made a great play with $14 million, but that's it. The game's over.
Well, I mean, it certainly is for the two of them. Christy had Jack Reacher. You know, that's a fine showing. Fantastic Beasts. I mean, it'll make money. It won't make $400 million money, and certainly the comedian is not going to take
It'll get close. It'll get close.
We'll see, but basically, I'm already seeing Christy not having a chance. Justin, however, basically, he's got Inferno, Doctor Strange, Allied, The Great Wall, Dark Tower. Doctor Strange will make a lot of money. The buzz is very, very good, and I'm very, very excited about it. But Inferno was a surprise stinker. Like there was articles saying that, oh wow, this is the fourth Ron Howard movie in a row to completely tank at the box office. So I think Inferno really needed to be a strong performer for Justin's strategy to pay off, and it doesn't look like it did.
Well, I tell you what, I'm feeling very confident about Rogue One, a Star Wars story coming out in December. But the other movie coming out along with Doctor Strange this week is Trolls, and this is going to make or break me. This is the one that decides whether I'm at all competitive or not.
I disagree. Rogue One is going to make all the money. You could probably win just on having Rogue One, full stop. But I do think that the huge positive buzz for Doctor Strange is gonna squeeze out some troll action, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, how many? It's the kids movie versus the Marvel movie. And as we know, lots of kids get taken to those Marvel movies.
Yep.
So it's not a counter-programming move to put Trolls out on the same weekend. I kind of wonder why they did that.
Yep. I don't know, but I feel like Doctor Strange is going to get away with looking enough like a kid's show that a lot of 10-year-old boys are going to go see it.
Yep. I need Trolls to go above 70 million to feel comfortable. I need it. If it goes 100 million, I'll be fine. It's not going to get either of those this first weekend, though. It's going to have to get them on the follow-ups.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
All right. Let's get into the triage. No, actually, we're not going to get into triage. We have a note from T2T2. If you are a person who entered the chat realm version of the movie draft, he wants people to know that entries were pruned because of duplicates. A bunch of people have put in some duplicate entries. If by any chance your only entry got pruned by mistake, message T2T2 either in the chat room or on Twitter, and he'll look into it for you.
Yeah. And that's at T2T2.
All right. So now we can get into talking about Black Mirror. Shannon, you did before we get into talking about episodes 3 through 6 of season 3. You binged the whole thing?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was so sick I couldn't do anything this weekend, and then Black Mirror was on there, and my friend at work was like, "You need to watch this," so I did, and then I kept on watching, and now I'm sad that there's no more.
Believe me, I'm right there with you. We finished it up this weekend too.
I must enjoy being depressed or something, because after every single episode of that show, I was just like, wow, that really stinks. That sucks.
I don't know. I mean,
what's going to happen to us in the future?
There's some heavy ideas in there, and they're taken to ridiculous extremes at times. But there's some of them that I thought were rather quaint in some ways.
Let's start with the farthest from being quaint. I think I consider this the darkest of the new season. Shut Up and Dance. which is the one where a boy gets caught masturbating because his sister accidentally installed malware on the laptop. And then, of course, we find out it's even darker than we thought by the end of this story. First off, Shannon Morse, co-host of Hack 5. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good is the hacking tech in this episode?
Oh, man. This was my least favorite episode of season 3. I didn't like it. I didn't like how it portrayed hackers in general. The fact that it was really, really messing with people's heads and making them do all these horrible things that, like, morally they just didn't want to do. So I don't know. It was messed up to me, and I was not into this this third episode of the season very much at all.
You know what's funny is I had the exact same reaction from the social engineering side of things, where it's like I found it utterly implausible and unbelievable that somebody would become a murderer to stop a jerk-off tape from leaking based on spurious evidence of all of this. Like, there is structure, there's social pressures. That's what was so great about the very first episode is of season 1, where as outrageous as the terrorist demands were that the prime minister have sex with the pig or whatever, at least they kept building a structure that got tighter and tighter to where the simplest way to deal with it was to, well, just shut up and have sex with the pig, would you? Like, they built a credible, that is an incredible cold shot to build up to and pull off in a way that was believable. I felt like they didn't get anywhere near close to this. It's like, I don't know, the kid's real embarrassed, and so that's why he's going to murder someone. And I was like, nope.
Yeah, and I was having the same feelings until the end when they realized it was little boys that he was looking at, not just the innocent porn that we thought. And it's like, well, maybe that would drive you over the top because you're going to be a pariah after that. But I almost feel like that wasn't a good twist. That's something you needed to tell me early on for me to buy all of this, because we did have an excellent performance from Braun Sellsword.
He was great. He was great.
He's fantastic, and he's believable because he is just enough worried to do just what they push him to do, and what they have over him is exactly what they tell you they have over.
Right.
Yeah, I also I don't know. For a million different reasons,
all
it just
at the same
didn't.
Conclusion
Yeah, it just didn't land.
It was just kind of like, I don't know. It made me feel kind of dirty. I just didn't like that episode very much.
Well, and even if all the tech was perfect, even if the social engineering had been executed well, how would you feel at the end when the hacker just goes ahead and releases all the information anyway?
Yeah, it felt like there was no ending. There was no like happy ending or anything in this.
I'm not even sure there was a message here.
It's just going to keep on going.
Well, and again, I the more I think about it, this one really is kind of structurally identical to the very first episode. But what the first episode did well was indicate here is an artist with nothing to lose. This is somebody who has a terminal disease, who just wants to see the world burn, who wants to give one statement that will ripple throughout the ages. And so he constructs a hoax that psychologically manipulates this outrageous scene that ultimately changes nothing about politics. The prime minister keeps on doing his prime ministering things. But I believed all of it. This was just nihilistic and it was cartoony. It was the difference between the first episode was Raiders of the Lost Ark. This episode was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
They went right to Crystal Skull, man.
Right?
Like, come on.
It was ridiculous. Yeah. It was over the top.
Yeah. And Gauchum says that it was just said children, not specifically boys. So that may be true too, but I don't think that changes our conclusions in any way. Thankfully, you go right into San Junipero, which is fascinating because at first it just feels like, well, they're doing a period piece, so there must be something else. Then you think the twist is time travel, and then it turns out it's not time travel at all. It's the multiverse, but only available to the dead or dying.
It was adorable. It was sweet and wonderful, and I turned it on with Bonnie trying not to watch. She was trying to write an email or whatever. But then like certain songs would come on, like when T'Pau's Heart and Soul came on, she instantly looked up. It was like a moth to the flame, and she
Eileen was
sucked in.
watching it. She wasn't trying to ignore it, but she had that same reaction when Heart and Soul came on. She's like, "Oh, cool."
Yes. And of course, all of those music selections were very carefully selected. And the fact that they kept playing them again was, number one, symbolically appropriate, because this is a world that is trapped in essentially a single weekend forever. But also, it was great to have the very first song you hear is Heaven is a Place on Earth, and it's used to set the time, and then you hear it again at the end, and it has obviously a very different context to it. I thought it was adorable. I thought it was great.
I thought it was beautiful the way that they directed this one. Just like you said, with the Heaven is a Place on Earth, like that's such a great example. And the fact that you're questioning what is going on in this episode throughout, I want to say, half of the episode. You don't really understand what's going on necessarily until the very end, when they finally explain to each other, like, oh, where do you live? And they go to visit each other, and you see that they're two old ladies and one's about to pass away. It's so sad, and it made me kind of in a psychological way question how we think about death in the future. If this was a possibility in the future, the fact that we would have technology that would allow us to live on with people that we love, like, would we fear death like we do these days? Or would it just be another form of us moving on, especially for people that are atheists? Like, we don't necessarily believe in heaven. So this would be a moving on in a technological age, as opposed to just, ending your life.
Well, and that's the great existential question, is essentially, so what you have is you go into this simulation, and a simulated version of yourself experiences all these things. Then you come back to your physical body with the memories of all the things that happened. But essentially, the physical body of you dies, and essentially just a simulation of who you are has pretend adventures and simulated joys and hopes and dreams and adventures. And the simulation is very happy for itself, which brings me to the question of, like, okay, so you're running that facility. I mean, do you have to run it at full speed? Seems like if you save a lot of power by just slowing it down, and nobody's going to notice because all the simulations are running slower.
Yeah, just get that thing I use on DOSBox.
Yeah, just slow it down even more. Slow it down even more, Like, make it to where a year takes a second. And then at some point it's like, well, I mean, nobody's, we're just running programs here.
Isn't that speeding it up?
That
would be more processing power.
Well, no. You would be using less processing power, so it would take much longer to, it would take a year of processing time to equal
you could run this on a
486,
486, and it wouldn't really matter.
Gotcha.
Right.
I was
No. Yeah, flip that. Right. Okay. But then it's like, also, like, who's there to say don't do that, or do that, or who cares? It's like it's fascinating to me to wonder, because on the one hand, there is a value of, especially, I would like a simulation of me to run and be happy, so I could talk to my great grandchildren, and then they can get an idea of what I was about and whether or not I had something to offer. In that, I don't know. I liked the big questions this one asked more than maybe any episode of all of Black Mirror.
Yep.
Well, one of the things I love about this episode, first of all, I just love the stories. The nursing attendant who decides to marry her, because why not?
Yeah.
Who's gonna get hurt? The woman who meets her in the world and says, well, no, you know what? I should marry her because we actually have some real affection, and nobody's feelings are hurt by that. It's not a drama. It's like, well, that's just so sweet. Like, everything is sweet but not too sweet, and it's great. I love that it didn't spend a long time on the philosophical questions. It left that for us to talk about now, and didn't because a lot of these kinds of stories will go too far down that road. The only hang up I have, and this is not a problem with the episode, it's a great question the episode puts forth to you, and it even hints that it's aware of that question, is if this is running on your brain when you're plugged in, right? You have the little thing and you're experiencing it. So your brain is interfacing with the computer. How is that? And Brian, you basically mentioned this. How is that still you when your brain isn't connected to it anymore? It's not like the computer took over your brain and sort of eventually replaced you, and there's no distinction. There's no clear line. It's your brain accesses the computer, and then when you die, the computer just has a version of you. Like that's not the same thing as you, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, now we get into the question of like whether or not, being transported on the Starship Enterprise is you dying
right?
and another you being created, right?
Yep.
Because I always took it as like basically the moment you go in, a simulation of you runs, making pretty much the same decisions you would make, and then you just get the memories, much like a dream, are false memories that you wake up, and of course your brain tries to scrub those memories as fast as it can. In this case, it just lets you keep those memories as if you were really there in San Junipero.
Yeah, and that's a great way to look at it. I was looking at it as VR. Like I'm experiencing this, but it's all in my brain. It's the best VR ever because I don't need a headset or anything else. It just takes over my visual cortex and all my sensory perception. And I get to be young again because it doesn't have to use any of my physical body. And again, that's the strength of this episode is you can debate these sorts of things because it leaves it believable enough, but not definitive enough. For you to have some room to talk about.
One thing we haven't talked about is the fact that these two women who find each other are in very different psychological places. So we have a totally different existential discussion or argument. That moment where out of ignorance, and forgive me, I've forgotten the names, but young paralyzed girl says like, well, whatever, just forget about it. Come marry me. Let's have it all happy. And let me say something disrespectful about your husband. And then the slap on the face. And it's like, I have grown old and watched my children die. Don't you disrespect. I lived a life. Just because you didn't doesn't mean that you get to tell me I don't have to, or I shouldn't care about mine. Like that was a great moment of gravitas in what otherwise was a fairly light episode.
And it was just such a wonderful separation when you're seeing the young version of Kelly say that, but then knowing the old version is actually thinking it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I could see the old version saying all of these things. It lacks a certain gravitas when the young person says it, but it's an interesting mix because it has the gravitas because the old person is thinking it.
I really liked one thing that Kelly mentioned during this episode when she was like, my daughter passed away a long time ago, and she never even got to experience this technology. She never even got the chance to be here. And then I believe her husband died as well, and he chose not to be there because he figured if my daughter wasn't able to experience this, why should I selfishly be able to, move on into this technological era? And I don't know. I just really, really loved when she talked about that and the fact that, if we did have that in the future, we wouldn't have this for our grandparents who have passed away in earlier times. So, like, how would you use that if you had the option?
Yeah. No, it's I think probably the strongest episode of this particular season, and certainly one of the strongest of the whole run.
Well, and especially because it does what all good storytelling does, and Black Mirror, when it's at its best, does is it gives it asks very interesting questions about the future of technology, very high-minded stuff, but at the same time gives a very visceral, very simple, very human story for us to latch on to emotionally. So you get the intellectual and the emotional aspect in there.
And now the next episode, Men Against Fire, is one of those kinds of stories where it's, the military fighting what are they called?
The roaches.
The roaches, which is hilarious because I've seen that used as slang for aliens that look like roaches and plenty of other science fiction, going all the way back to Starship Troopers.
And I'm sure that's an intentional move on their part, right? Is because it is such a trope. It's like, oh, they're going to be like subhuman because that's what I expect.
And then we find out that this is all in their minds because of the implant, and the people actually don't look anything like other folks. It's all part of a eugenics program.
Yeah, I just don't understand how it benefits Frank Underwood's campaign such that he had to send his main man.
I believe that Stamper would be able to pull this off.
I believe it,
mind you. Yeah, but what the backstory is with Frank, I don't get.
Seeing Doug Stamper show up as the psychologist, I thought was really, really good. This one was super well acted. I smelled the twist coming a little bit early ahead of time, But
Me too.
I don't think that's a flaw in the storytelling. I think that's just like how good it is. It's like, oh my God, you know what I think it is? And it was very satisfying to be proven right, you know?
Yeah. No, I felt the same way. It was less of a, we're going to surprise you, which can get tiring after a while, and more of a like, you see the twist, you ready for the reveal, you ready to look? And and there it was. And of course, you know, the soldier having to deal with like, okay, I've been lied to, but was I lied to for a good reason? You know, maybe, you know, and Stamper starts to play with him that way and say, hey, you know what? We're just trying to protect you, because these people do need to be wiped out, and you couldn't do the job.
Yeah,
ahead,
he had
Shannon.
to make that choice. Like, do I allow them to wipe my memory at that point and just start over? Or do I, you know, end up in jail for a long time because I choose to stand by what I believe in instead of just letting him wipe my memory? And he chose to let them wipe his memory. What I didn't understand at the end, because they didn't really go into the story at all, was the woman that he kept on seeing in his dreams. And at the very, very end, when he's seeing this vision of a beautiful house, like, you know, was she real, or did she pass away? Like, who was she? And I
think she was
kept
just
on
virtual
wondering
woman.
about that.
Yeah.
I thought she was just made up woman for his nighttime rewards.
Well, and specifically that I thought was an interesting twist, because you know, you get to that moment where he's in agony, he's replaying the actual scene of him murdering those human beings in his mind. He's at his darkest moment, and he's offered the chance to you know, either, you know, stick to principle for whatever good that's going to do him, or go back to being a cog, which he agreed to. But to me, the obvious last scene is of him, you know, being part of a squad, clearing out another group of roaches, him as the machine. I thought it was a really telling and fascinating take to instead show us the end denouement of him going home, the forgotten, used up cog of the whatever war this is, this broken veteran, like despite the fact that all of this existed so that it would not send home broken hardware of human beings. That's exactly what you got, because even as he's looking at his rundown, lonely, abandoned home, there he is in full military regalia, fantasizing about a woman who's not there. And you know that fantasy's not going to keep on going. You know, this is the end of his mass delusion. Wait.
Oh, no. See, I thought I took it entirely differently. I thought he was put under house arrest and essentially sent back with the simulation in his brain running, so that he would look and see the woman and see that the house looked nice, even though it isn't, and be living in squalor, but not realize it. And that was the reward for choosing, you know, to go have his memory wiped.
Oh no, I totally took it as he made the decision, like, yeah, I'll go back in, and this is what happens at the end of his tour of duty. Because if they're going to wipe
that's not how I took it at all.
If they're going to wipe his memory, why wouldn't they put him right back in the field? And
because he's faulty. This is a gun that jammed before. You don't put it back into circulation. But you don't want him out there where he could possibly leak out the information. So you want to wipe his memory, put him somewhere safe. At least that's what I was thinking.
So, see, I didn't read that at all as you're going to jail either way, but you can either live with reality.
You can have fun jail or miserable jail.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking of him, military brat, what's up? I was thinking of him being like dishonorably discharged, and this was their way of discharging him from the military, sending him back home, making him feel like, you know, he's happy, like he was crying, like happy tears at the end. At least that's what it seemed like to me.
Sure.
So it's interesting though that you have, you know, three different perspectives in this room right now, from three different histories. So all of us kind of viewed that ending very differently.
All right, let's kick it out to the fans. I want to know if anyone else saw it a different way from us. Cordkillers@gmail.com.
What if they were priming him to be a roach? Because the roaches lived in squalor.
Yeah, well, but they made it clear that roaches were a different ethnicity.
They were people with a
Different
genetic. They were people considered genetically inferior.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's what the rest of them were. But if you needed a target,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Interesting. I don't
More
know.
questions.
Okay, so
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude.
So we finish up with Hated in the Nation, which features the woman from Trainspotting as a detective who doesn't believe in her millennial sidekick, who also was the woman who used to torture Arya in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, man. It's about it's a very empowering story of awesome mismatched detective women. Dude, this was a lot of fun. I felt, again, it's like you watch these things enough and it's like, oh, they sure are taking a moment to describe these bees to us at the beginning. Wonder if that's going to come into anything.
No, I saw the bees coming from miles away, as small as they were.
Yes. But having said that, I thought it was a delightful mystery, and I did dig the double twist. Like 2/3 of the way through the story, I'm like, that's not his real end game. What's going on? And then it's like, oh shoot, yeah. Like the fact that it luring
the
people
part
into.
where he's like, people need to know there are consequences. I'm like, really? Like, I didn't get all the way there. I was like, well, that seems like, I guess he's just a messed up guy because he's punishing the wrong people here, isn't he? It's like, oh yeah, no, he was, but on purpose.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I recently followed on Twitter, I followed John Ronson, who wrote a book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed. And it's about this weird horde mentality on Twitter that causes us to want to shame people.
Yes.
And he interviews Justine Sacco, the girl who wrote, "Hey, I'm going to Africa, hope I don't get HIV. Ha, just kidding, I'm white." And how on that one flight she became the number one trending topic on Twitter. And she was like, "No, it was a joke about white privilege. It was about how disrespectful it is to think that, and it was ironic." And at any rate, I knew this theme was coming up because somebody asked John Ronson if he had seen it, and he said how much he loved it. And it was fun to go into it saying, having read that book, if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoy this idea of the horde mentality shaming people as a tool for public good or for public ill, I highly recommend John Ronson's book.
I really like this episode, just like from my own perspective of, being on Twitter and doing podcasts online and understanding that sometimes herd mentality happens and people will hate on you for doing the simplest innocent thing that you don't know any better about. Like those things happen. And when they do, you don't expect for everybody to make you feel like you need to die, but all of a sudden people are using this hashtag on the show, death to, and whoever it might be. So it was a harsh reality, but it was so close to home. I was just like, ooh, wow, this is a good episode. I really enjoyed it.
Agreed.
Brian, I saw a post from you on Twitter shortly before I watched this episode where you were just saying nice things to your followers.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mentioned, hey, so I'm watching Black Mirror. Unrelatedly, hey, I love all you guys. You're super the best. That was definitely inspired by this exact episode.
Now, we could talk forever about just how nicely parallel this is and how they've taken reality and exaggerated it to a point to teach us a lesson, and that's what Black Mirror does really well. But I want to get to the real controversy in this episode. Did you guys notice that the death to hashtag was originally all one word, but then later shifted to be death to with a space, and that would be harder to search for?
Well, and also they never specifically mention which social network, because if it's something like Twitter, that
what is this, Plurk? Pounce? Which one is it?
Pounce. Wow, deep cut.
Apparently hashtags survived for a very long time, long enough for bees to go out of service and for us to have to come up with this incredibly abstract and amazing technology of having these little teeny tiny drone bees that fly around and pollinate everything and get hacked, because that's still a thing in the future.
Absolutely. No, I'm sure that Hack 5 did a segment on this in the future.
Oh, yeah, of course. We would have had the creator on.
The bees hack. Well, anything else for us to minutely pick over on what is otherwise an amazing episode?
Dude, I gotta tell you, I was surprised. I know we reported on the story that it was being broken into two segments, the full season broken into two pieces, but I was unprepared. Like, I hit next and I was confused why I was watching the first episode. And I was like, what's going on? And then I realized it's already over and I was sad.
Yeah. In a way, I'm glad. Because previous seasons of Black Mirror have been 3 or 4 episodes, right? So I almost feel like it was an embarrassment of riches to have 6. And speaking of rich, it's like eating a rich food. I kind of need to push away from the table for a little while and digest Black Mirror. And I hopefully it won't be too long because I definitely want more. But it's nice to have a little space here.
Agreed.
It's kind of a heavy show. Like there's a lot to take in with the show. It's very psychological, and there's a lot of really interesting aspects, and a lot of it hits our current timeline reality. So it's one of those things that you do have to kind of eat a few bites of, and then take a moment and kind of digest it before you move on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that wraps up our wrap up of Black Mirror. Thank you, Shannon Morse, for sticking around and talking with us.
Thank you. Yeah, that was super fun. I really like that show. And props to Dan Trachtenberg for his episode.
Oh, my God.
I didn't even know he was directing one until I watched it. And I was like, what?
Oh, wait. So you watched the whole episode and then saw his name?
Yep.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
I didn't even know that he directed it until I saw his name pop up, and I had to pause it, and I was like, oh my God. So that was really cool. Like,
that's great.
Go Dan.
Very, very cool. Well, we can check out more of your stuff if you go to hack5.com and, of course, techthing.com and, of course, twitter.com/snubs, SNUBS.
Yep.
Thank you again, Shannon.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, Shannon.
Good night. Happy Halloween.
All right, now can we finally talk some Westworld?
Let's talk
Just
some
us boys.
Westworld again.
Just us boys. I feel so inhibited. I can't talk about all that sexy robot on robot action.
Before we start, James Smith wrote in with a note and said, Brian, Tom, please add this image to your show doc so you know who to talk about. And it is a pictorial guide to all of the people in Westworld.
Video people, this is how it's done. You don't curse the darkness, you light a candle. This is something he very carefully put together, a collection of hosts, a collection of staff, a collection of guests, all with pictures so we could give their actual names. I wish I could say that would cause us to give all their names, but instead we're still probably going to get a little bit creative with what we refer to them as.
We just like doing it. But what this will do, what our friend James has done here is allowed us to go, milk drinking guy. Oh, wait, Walter, right? It's just a tab click away.
There it is. So speaking of which, I think we have we have
another
email?
one from Steve.
Yeah, there we go. Steve writes in saying, hey guys, don't know how many people have written in to say this yet, but quote, Bernard Lowe is a very obvious anagram for Arnold Weber.
Whoa, code cracked.
Number one, amazing. Number two, you and I have very different interpretations about what makes for an obvious anagram. Pretty sure Bernard is a host copy of Ford's partner, Arnold, and maybe even a few scenes between Dolores and Bernard are actually flashbacks of Dolores and Arnold. This is what they call in the puzzle world a confirmer. Like when you like that anagram is unquestionable that there's a link between the two, possibly the same. I absolutely agree.
All right, I'm 100%. Okay, I'll 99.59% convinced that Arnold and Bernard are the same. Whether Bernard is an android version of Arnold or something, or Arnold faked his death. I don't think that's it, though. I think he's an android. I don't know if it's a flashback or not.
Oh, hold on. What if, oh, wait. What do we know about Arnold? We know that the disagreement between Ford and Arnold was that Ford thought they were supposed to be automatons that meant to mimic human actions, but that Arnold wanted them to actually be able to have cognition and think. Why would you want that? One reason is if you planned to inhabit one.
Yep.
And download your consciousness to it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe Bernard looks nothing like Arnold, but has the real Arnold on the inside quietly playing his long game.
And we already know from this episode that Arnold is speaking to Dolores, right?
Yes.
And we're assuming that it's code buried somewhere in there that's talking to her, but maybe he exists in all of the androids to a point. Right? Maybe he's like in the system, so to speak, and the central node is Bernard.
Holy cow. Gouchum in the chat just proposed something that blew my mind. He said, did they ever say whether this Westworld is a continuation of the original movie story? Because everything we're seeing could be, because this could be a mature, just like Jurassic World was, oh yeah, we had Jurassic Park, there was problems, but now everything's fine and we know how to make dinosaurs and so on. That would totally work for this world as well.
Yeah, no, it absolutely would. And this goes along with another theory that's being purported out there. I read an IO9 write-up about it, and it's starting to get me convinced that William, I'm going to flip over to my tab here, make sure I'm saying right
name. It's William.
Yeah, that William and Logan are actually in an earlier timeline from the one we see behind the scenes. William and Logan are actually the shareholders that eventually buy the company. They're the ones that Ford is railing against when he talks to Teresa Cullen. Hey, this thing is working. Like, I sound like I know these characters.
I know, right? By the way, everybody send these in. I really appreciate
this. So William is actually part of the company that buys it later, because Ford does talk about how it was originally a partnership, and the shareholders came in and saved it after Arnold died. So maybe this is happening before Arnold's died on the Williams side.
Okay.
And the other part of this is because we see Lawrence in both Williams' storyline and the Man in Black storyline almost back to back, too fast for him to have been repaired and sent back out in the field. We know that those aren't happening entirely continuously, and Io9's story and many other people are purporting that William is the Man in Black, that Logan's taunting of him of being middle management forces him to move up in the company. Maybe he kills Logan later on and becomes the prime shareholder of the foundation that then buys Westworld. And that's why he is in that game trying to solve the situation.
So the one problem with this theory is that we see a iterative escalation of quality of the hosts. We are very deliberately shown. Is it Wild Bill Hickok, or I forget who his drinking buddy is?
Oh yeah, he's not on the list.
Right,
here.
but we see a 1.0 version of these guys, and we're told that Dolores has developed, but it's very clear that the Westworld that we're seeing, we've only seen an operating Westworld of one quality. And it's been consistent. And if you're going to tell me there's a 50-year gap or a 40-year gap between one to the other, that's going to be harder to swallow, given the fact that the quality.
I could go with a 10-year gap maybe and say like the William era is far enough along from the Wild Bill Hickok era that they're up and about and doing well, and we just don't notice all of the subtle differences. But that's even a stretch.
Yeah, and the best part is as much fun as this is, I don't mind if we're totally wrong on everything we've been saying. Either. Like the story is hypnotic and sucks me in. This is the first episode where things started to actually make sense to me. It's like, oh, okay, we're starting to put pieces together, not all the pieces, but more pieces together. Dolores is hearing Arnold very clearly. She's wanting to find the maze. We know that the maze is a thing. And then I love that they just ballsy writing, put Ford out there and have him sit down with the Man in Black. Yeah. And just be like, yeah, we're going to have the creator of the game walk into the guy trying to solve the game and just sort of be like, how you doing? You enjoying yourself? I don't think you're going to get very far, but all right, good luck. Well, I'm convinced that part of that resentment on Ford's part is that the Man in Black is not playing Ford's game. Ford wants people to have the touristy experience. No, he's playing Arnold. Arnold that insisted on the game within a game. And maybe it's a game that even Ford has not been able to solve. And that might be part of why he resents it. So instead, he sees the Man in Black and he's just like, on the fool's errand, I see, chasing dreams of a dead partner who's always didn't have the vision I had. Well, you have that gold platinum status, so I guess enjoy it, sir. Yeah, I can't stop you because maybe you own the company. Right. But yeah, I don't know, man. I just absolutely
have fallen in love. I haven't not liked these episodes. I've been captivated by them, but more in the pastiche kind of observant way. This is the first time I've really started to get sucked into the story and really caring about what the maze is and how these characters fit together. There was one other thing. Oh, Elsie. We keep spending a lot of time with Elsie, who's the one trying to track down the problem, but also getting warned off of tracking down the problem. And so I'm very fascinated with what part she is going to end up playing.
I'd hate to say it, but she has an engineering mindset. She sees a problem. She wants to solve it, which to me means she's going to end up discovering she's going to go too deep. She's going to see the wrong thing at the wrong time. And I don't know how long we're going to have Elsie around.
Well, yeah, but I'm really curious what she sees right before she dies.
Sure. Sure. Wow, we're bad people.
I know. We're the Men in Black. Oh, no.
Write letters in. Let her know.
All right. Shall we move on to Justified then?
Yeah. One more side thing. There's a tweet I saw from Scott Johnson saying that that he finds it interesting that Westworld is obstinately ignorant. Like the theme park appears to be obstinately ignorant of the racial tensions prevalent in the 1800s. And he doesn't know what it means, but he thinks that will have a significant reason in it, which I thought was an interesting prediction to throw out there.
I just felt like it was far enough in the future that they were like, that's not a part that people will have any fun with. We'll just leave that out.
That's what I thought too, especially like nowadays. Like I guarantee you, in the early 20th century, people were really good at telling who's Irish and who's not. I can't tell who's Irish. I just have no eye for it.
Well, I can, Brian. I can.
I believe it.
Every day when I look in the mirror.
But my point is that maybe we've reached a place where there's still segregation and there's still, some kind of tribalism, but it's on different, it's more maybe socioeconomic than, melanin based or whatever.
Totally. Yeah, when you go to the New York casino, they don't make a big deal out of the five corners so much.
They're going to war with each other all the time. Everybody's we're like, we're trying to keep to the themes, so it's like cheeks are ripped out from fish hooking and gang wars.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Justified, episode 3 of season 4. Raylan starts looking for Drew Thompson, who everybody believes is alive. Raylan's first stop in the Thompson search is visiting Thompson's former wife. And then she sneaks out the back door when a guy starts coming towards the front who turns out to be an FBI agent, except, whoa, wait a minute. He's a dirty FBI agent because he's under the thumb of the Detroit Mafia, who, now that they know that Drew Thompson is alive, is looking for them. And that FBI agent I thought was going to be set up for a season-long, temptation of Raylan. I've got some dirt on you. You can't expose the dirt on me. But then he shoots himself in the face. So that's
which I think was a bold and strong move to basically. That was great shorthand to say, like, no, whatever this big foe is, it is so terrifying that it took what otherwise appears to be, a relatively honest man, because he says, man, I can't even remember all the times I've been on your side of the conversation. This is somebody who's had experience, but just this time, I didn't get the vibe that he was a habitually dirty cop, but that he was just under the thumb of a horrific power and needed out.
He was under the thumb of Theotonin. It's nice that we have a little callback to last year. Not only do we see Wynn Duffy again, but we get a callback to Theotonin, and Quarles even gets a shout out at one point in a conversation here.
Wait, when was that?
There's a point where they're talking about the Detroit connection, and I think it's Raylan who says, when Duffy and Quarles were down here. And I was like, oh, look at that. We got a little in-universe consistency there. It was a throwaway line. Sure. But it was nice world acknowledging there. And also now all of that time we spent seeing how bad Theotonin is building up to mean even more. Side story is we have what's his name?
Boyd, where's our graphic?
Boyd Crowder. How did I forget Boyd Crowder? We need an image bank. We see Boyd decide to act against the preacher because he thinks he knows what's going on with the wife needing money, but the wife says that's not enough money. And so he sends a message by sending his boys over there who get bit by rattlesnakes, but don't die. Tip off. Those rattlesnakes are milked of venom. And so he shows up with a real rattlesnake, which Billy decides to handle anyway.
Yeah. So I'm so stuck on this superhero fantasy archetypes that we're seeing, because the whole Boyd versus Pretty Face McPreacher Pants, they that was a battle of sorcerers, right? That was two people who had the same skills, and they tried to draw mana from the crowd, and they had a face-off in their poetry slam freestyle rap battle. I was like, I'm gonna do 12 metaphors, I swear.
Yeah, no, but pour them on, man. Pour them on.
But it was great to see the feint, counter feint, and the calling out. I loved all of it, and I'm glad that they explained that. There was something about the rattlesnakes, because, man, there's one thing when we were shooting Hacking the System, and you listen to a rattlesnake wrangler explain to you just how bad it is. Like a 1 in 20 bit by a rattlesnake will die, D-I-E, and he got a snake to bite a thing, and you just see a little puddle. He's like, yeah, that's enough to kill a man, and I'm like, bleh. It was crazy.
Yeah. No joke there. And when the doctor's like, I can't believe he's lasted this long. He with that number of bites, half that number of bites, he should have died already. And you're like, oh. Yeah, you just see it dawn on Boyd. That was a nice little side story.
And I'm dumb because I was too busy caught up and yeah, he should have. This is bad writing. He should already be dead. I know that those are really dangerous snakes. But meanwhile, you were smart like Boyd and figured out that there was something about the snakes.
Well, this is a solid episode, and honestly, not that much really happens. It's a chase episode for Drew Thompson's ex-wife, and you've got the preacher sideline, and that's about it. But it held my interest. I didn't feel like it was an episode that was light on anything.
I really liked the clinical detachment that you saw both from the cops side and from the psychic side. And that discussion, that negotiation that they had, where she's like, well, what if I did know something? I'm just going to suddenly know it now that I didn't know 20 years ago. And they're like, well, maybe it came to you in a vision, psychically when you were being smacked around just then.
Yeah, what does he call it? Not psychometry, but he calls it
Yes. I forget what it was, but yeah, but they feed it that's psychometry. Look, it's we all know it's bullshit, but it's your bullshit, and you'll be able to spin this bullshit into more bullshit.
Yeah.
I liked that negotiation behind the words they were having.
Now, I think we should finish on the final scene, which is of course Raylan showing up at the bar, not having met with the boxer. I guess there is a third storyline here where he tells the boxer to meet him after class at 6:00, and they'll battle it out over poor man's Ava. And then the boxer doesn't show up, and he thinks, oh, well, I would have pegged him to fight me, but I guess he took the message and ran. And then he comes back to the bar, and his apartment has been tossed, and she's nowhere to be found.
I am increasingly convinced that he is the wild card that we are meant to feel like is a bad force, but ultimately will be wholly redeemed when he surprisingly comes to her aid with the undying love of a pit bull terrier.
So he's the Lando Calrissian.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. He's Lando. He's Boxer Lando, and I'm glad I have a name for him now.
Boxer Lando. We'll be back in episode 4 of Justified. So that's it. Thanks, everybody, for playing along with us. Hope you enjoyed it. We love spoiling you, and you deserve it.
Bye-bye.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.